For me, it's like I follow your process by you telling me what you need, what economic value you need to get out of this engagement, what are the X factors that's been holding you back, and what is the timeline you're operating from. So this is our service framework to take you to the next level.
If you can get them to come to the yeses, a little yes here, a little yes here, a little yes here, it makes that final yes. They see it the whole way. If you're getting those little yeses along the way, the solution at the end is a no-brainer.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is Walter Crosby, CEO of Helix Sales and Development and host of the Sales and Cigars podcast. He's the guy leaders call when they want to build a sales team that actually performs without selling their soul in the process. With decades in the trenches of B2B sales and leadership, Walter's no-fluff, straight-talk approach has helped clients boost revenue on average by 37 to 43%, while transforming the way they lead. He's a master storyteller who takes complex challenges and makes them simple, actionable, and unforgettable. Get ready. This is going to be equal parts raw, practical, and powerful. Welcome to the show, Walter.
Wow. That is one of the most generous intros I've ever heard. Thank you, John. Glad to be here.
Hey, man, bust out the cigars and let's have a talk about sales. I'm highly motivated because I've been doing sales since I was a little boy, a paper boy, mowing lawns. You know, my brother used to push me. My older brother used to push me to the door because he didn't want to ask people to mow their lawns, but that's how we made money for school clothes. And I didn't know that, he was giving me the greatest gift of my life because he didn't want to do it. And I just became natural at doing it. And I've been doing it now my entire life, professionally for 35 years.
It starts when you're a kid. I was a paper boy. We cut lawns. Now, my brother was the one who didn't want to go knock on a door, but it's a great way to look at it. It is a gift to feel comfortable talking to people about something, right? And all of those people were older than us, right, when we were talking to them, and we got comfortable. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. My brother didn't want to do it. He was like 3.5 years older than me, and he just he'd literally push me and say, go ask him, go talk to him. And so you're right. I got comfortable and I conditioned it because most people are uncomfortable. And the more you get comfortable with the discomfort, the more it just goes away. And the more for me, the more you understand that sales is a service and something you do for people, not to them. I love to help people. And whenever I train new salespeople, and I've trained people all over the globe, a lot of people say I'm not a salesman, or they've got this limiting belief in their head that salespeople are slimy. When in actuality, salespeople are saints. Without sales, nothing in this world moves. Nothing. There's nothing without us.
It's a stereotype that is not without its merit, right? There are tons of people that are doing it poorly that give the rest of the profession a black eye. But if your goal is that you believe in your product, you believe in your service, and you know that it's going to help somebody, you should feel obligated to tell as many people about it as possible that are a fit. And if it isn't a fit, right, if you're talking to a person that doesn't, match up with what you're doing, next, right? You don't need to force a round peg into a square hole. But it is, if we're doing it right, we're helping people. And that's what our job is to elevate the profession, John. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I love helping people, even my junior salespeople or any sales team that I help, whether I'm, in a boardroom, whether I'm in a classroom, whether I'm on stage, and I've sold in all of these different arenas, door to door, store to store, in store, B2B. Literally, I've sold so many different things in so many different ways. And now, I'm actually selling software that empowers salespeople. I just flipped the script and decided to build software that empowers companies to transform their organization. That's, unlike anything that's in the marketplace, but we get thrown in a bucket of CRM, right? Which is just an address book, right?
Right.
So there's that challenge of really getting that value proposition across. And B2B, to me, it's just a bigger arena and it's a lot more fun, but there's a lot more boxes to check. There's a lot of stakeholders. There's, you're never really presenting and or making an offer to just an individual. It's, there's a hierarchy on their buying journey. They have their own buying process. And especially when you get into enterprise, even you close the CEO, then you still got to jump through the hoop of procurement. It's just another fascinating world of sales. And this is your expertise. So let's jump right into, how did you get involved, not as a paper boy, but your first gig in B2B sales, and what's led you to here, to Helix, where you develop organizations?
It's an interesting question. A lot of us that enter sales fall backwards into it, right? I graduated with an economics degree. What do you do with an economics degree? So I went to New York City and I didn't have a job. I knew some people. Sort of, this gentleman was mentoring me, and he's like, why don't we think about sales? And it was just something that I could get into. The bar was relatively low, still is in a lot of situations. So I had an opportunity to meet with the right person who was looking for somebody who had no desire to hire me. He thought I was a snot-nosed kid from the Midwest. I was 24 years old, didn't know anything about New York City. And he sat me in his office. He made me wait in his office for 25 minutes, talking on the phone. I knocked on his desk after 25 minutes and I said, I must have caught you at a bad time. I'll see you later. Thanks for the time. And I started to walk out his door and he's like, well, where are you going? I'm like, we had an appointment. And he's like, yeah, but where do you think you're going? I'm like, we had an appointment 25 minutes ago. I don't know what to tell you. And it wasn't strategic. I didn't have this thought, right? But it's the one little thing that gave me this edge. I changed his mindset, that if I was willing to stand up to the guy that might give me a job, that I probably could go talk to a CEO of a Fortune 1000 company and help them manage their leasing transaction for their multi-million-dollar office space. So what I learned through going through this process is it's discipline, it's hard work, it's making these calls, and it's looking for that little edge, because sales is really a slight edge business, and we can win or lose for the simplest of reasons. So it became a student. Anybody that was having success, I talked to them, figure out what they're doing, why they're doing it that way. Could I model that? Could I learn from them? And 40 years later, I'm still trying to get better. I'm still learning. I have mentors. I have coaches that I'm constantly looking to improve my skill set and sharpen my saw so I can help elevate the sales profession. I didn't want to go work for an entrepreneur. I wanted to work with them to solve their problems. And I think now after 10 years, I'm just unemployable. I can only do what I'm doing at this point. So I interrupted you.
Well, you're doing better than me, dude. I haven't been employable since I left the Navy in 1991. I've been a cowboy running my own show, bit of a maverick, but honestly helping others run their own businesses and teaching and training sales organizations. And I worked with an organization and helped them scale their business globally, from India to talk about crazy shit in India, from India, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Venezuela, like the tiger economies in Asia plus Venezuela in the United States. And I got to tell you, the evolution has been amazing as far as the growth, from understanding different cultures, understanding different people, learning to read the room. But at the end of the day, it comes back to exactly what you said. Sales is really something you're just doing for people, not to them, and helping. I'm a big Zig Ziglar fan, and I've got tons of different mentors. You mentioned Chet Holmes before we jumped on. I just learned, and I the more you learn, the more you understand, the less you really know. Because,
Very
but
true.
at the end of the day, sales is what Zig Ziglar said, SSS, service, solving problems, and making sure they're satisfied if you want to create great wealth. Because they'll keep coming back, even if you know, and they'll always be looking to solve a bigger problem. And the bigger problem you solve, the more money you make.
It's being willing to give, you know, because the people that are willing to give of themselves and provide value to others are the ones who get that back, right? But that can't be your goal. It's really about that level of service. I mean, we all want to get paid, don't get me wrong. But if you're really trying to understand, to help, you're going to go farther faster than if you're just looking to close a transaction. And I think that's something, as a younger person that's thinking about sales, if that becomes the mindset, service first, helping and understanding who you're helping and what it is that they need, you're gonna go farther than just trying to close a deal and move on, because that gets bigger, as you said, right? They're gonna keep coming back, like, well, he helped me with this thing, can you help me with that, right? And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, and sometimes we say yes and we have to go figure out how to solve that problem. But that's a different story.
Yeah, I've had that experience. That I've actually sold something that was not even created, just based on having a relationship and working with organizations that trust me, right? And I know that you work with EO. I've also spoke for EO in Manila, in the Philippines, and different organizations. But literally, I've worked with organizations selling, you know, supplements to farms for their livestock. Billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. And, you know, I never ever thought that I would even consider doing that. But I was trusted, and I trained her salespeople, company salespeople, and took them from like 20 million to 25 million in less than 6 months. We raised our revenue by $5 million. And it was simply coming from a space of service and implementing systems and process. And this is what you do now. But where did you discover, and how did you discover your processes that you implement now with organizations?
Well, I mean, I have a basic model that I use, that is to take a buyer through a journey that helps them as well as me qualify and disqualify a prospect. So it's a bit of a maturation process over time. You know, I've been trained in a variety of different methodologies, and I think there's certain ones that have stuck with me, and then there's processes that I've used as a model. But it's really stages that you take your buyer through, with milestones within that stage, right? That sets up your process. And what I try to do is match up my model with what that customer is trying to do with that buyer. And the commonalities are usually about 90%. And we just tweak some language, and we tweak a couple of steps and put things in the right order. Often we'll see somebody that wants to sell a demo before they've qualified a buyer to understand what their problem is. And so if we can move things around, ask the right questions in the right order. So it's a few years of experience of trial and error, and using several different methodologies and blending them together to make it my own. And then we still customize things for a particular organization based on what they need.
Yeah, and that's what I find. There's no out of the box real process or system, especially when you jump from one industry to the next industry. And for me, it's not about jumping. A lot of people have reached out and said, you know, you've done this for this person or this industry. Can you do it with ours? And that's what I found, because the buyer's journey is different. For FMCG goods, I mean, there's not a lot of thought that goes into a purchase, which is when it's fast moving consumer goods, right? I mean, if it's a laptop, it's a phone. I mean, there's not a lot of thought that needs to go in there, because there's not a lot of risk. But when you get into B2B sales, the game changes, and you got to start understanding risk reversal at the highest level. Because for me, whenever I make an offer, I want that offer to pay for itself. And that's the offer I have to every single one of my clients. Because in the absence of value, it always comes down to price. So I want to always demonstrate how the system can actually pay for itself. And then
quickly.
Yeah, and then you have risk reversal. And I've found in the B2B world that, as an example, when you do a competitive analysis or a battle card between your product, your service, and other companies' products and services, most of them show up for that transaction. Very few show or can demonstrate the big picture of transformation. And I don't allow my people to even send out quotes until there's an executive summary, a competitive analysis, a competitive advantage, and the economic impact that it's going to make for the actual company. No proposal. No, we don't do that. We're going to show you and demonstrate. And if that executive summary makes sense, then we can jump into how we do it.
So,
and I learned that by making the mistakes of doing what everybody else was doing, because I never built a software company before. But I figured out quite quickly, look, everybody's doing this the same way, and it's jacked. It's jacked. It doesn't work. Like I've never been in an industry where I was not successful in sales. Never. I've made mistakes. I've failed, but I always figure it out. That's why I wanted to know, like, what was your process for figuring it all out? Because for me, I learned by making mistakes.
Well, there's a great quote from Oscar Wilde that mistakes is the experience is the name I give to my mistakes, is his quote. And I read that the first time years and years ago, and it's so true, right? Our experience is based on wins and losses, successes and failures. So we talked about this earlier before we turned on the recording, that you need to fail to really learn some lessons, right? There's real failure that occurs. So I've made tons and tons of mistakes, and I've learned from them. And sometimes you can recover a deal, and if it's a mistake in a deal. So we've tried different things over the years. When I was selling in they would want me to sell a particular way, and I would just tweak things a little bit to give myself an advantage. I often sold products that were commoditized, right? And so I had to figure out what my little edge was, and we would just pivot the conversation. So it becomes, there's certain things you got to understand and demonstrate. You talked about, we don't give a proposal until we've identified that you can pay for this deal, that the risk is mitigated, you're going to save time and you're going to make money or save money. So those are the reasons people buy. We're really selling these feelings that there's something better over there. People are going to run from a problem. They have their dreams and they have their doubts about things. But what we need to be able to do is help them see that this is going to change the problem that they have. And that isn't done in a proposal. It's done through that qualification, that discovery process, the sales process. And then if you can put it all together with a nice bow that says, here's a summary of what we do, and here's what it looks like in terms of ROI, and here's where you save time, and this is where you can lose headcount, it becomes an obvious choice, right? Because you've done the work of understanding their problem, and you can get them over that hump, right? And then you do the proposal just becomes a formality. So the idea of making mistakes is key. I've probably made more than anyone, and when I'm working with a sales team, I can literally say to them, I've made all of the mistakes. We know this works. We know that doesn't work. So, and I'm speaking, from a position of I've already screwed it up. Let's not screw this up, right? I know how to do this. And when you run into something that you haven't encountered before, you take a step back and look at how does this relate to what I have learned and what I don't know, and you seek out those answers. Sales is really about, to me, it's about this exploration, and this detective work, right? It makes it fun because everything's the same, but it's always a different process. It looks a little different each time you do it. It's a big game that gets rewarded and it's so satisfying to see somebody get those wins, right? Have a company grow $5 million in 6 months. That's so satisfying. for you as the person that helped him get there.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. I literally increased her profit. She made an additional $1 million. It's not a small business. It's not a big business. She's doing 20 million a year, and we got her to 25 within 6 months. But that was an additional $1 million in profit for her. And, and she took care of me very well.
But she was also able to take that money and invest in her business, invest in herself, take some for herself, improve upon her team, her community, and do more of what she was doing.
I was invited to their annual dinner as a guest of honor, and I went. I was happy to do that for them.
It's a celebration of those wins, and yeah, we do well financially if we're helping people enough. But there's a certain amount of satisfaction that I get. I may have had a tough week. On a Friday afternoon, a salesperson calls me and says, "Hey, you know that thing we talked about on Monday? Yeah. Well, I tried it, and guess what? It worked, right?" And then they tell me about a win that they got. That and the excitement in their voice. I mean, that's a big part of the joy of what we do, right? I mean, you've got to have felt that millions of times over in your career.
Every time I watch one of my salespeople transform and they bring back business, and whether it's their first sale, their first time actually, making a difference, it changes their lives. Their lives are changed forever because, that is real validation when you can implement a system into a company, or you can sell them something that's going to transform their organization. And you did that. And B2B sales, for the most part, is a team sport, especially, I'm in software sales now, having created our own software, bootstrapped it, built an enterprise level system. Not easy. Boy, oh boy, no. Costly. Oh my God.
A lot of money.
We could buy a lot of cigars with the money I invested. I'll tell you what, cigars and cars. You could buy cigars and cars, literally Ferraris. What? Pick one. Pick one. That's how much software costs.
And then but on the backside of that, when that starts to change lives, you get all of that back plus, right? I mean, that's the joy.
Yeah.
That's the joy.
The car is just a bonus because I don't put a lot of value on things, although I like nice things and everything. But yeah, I put a value on making a difference in people's lives. Now, and before that was salespeople, transforming just ordinary people into being extraordinary so they live an extraordinary life. And now I transform ordinary organizations into extraordinary ones with systems that are replicatable, duplicatable, that empower the company and the culture with technology. I just took that psychology and the methodology and put it into technology. I love the phrase, if you want your success to be automatic, be scientific. Numbers don't lie. And that's my quote. If you want your success to be automatic, be scientific with your effort, with learning. But instead of becoming academic on this podcast, right? That's real world things I learned going door to door, business to business, and selling from the stage, selling in a room, one-on-one, one-on-many in boardrooms. Like, this is just an evolution of my journey and of making mistakes to learn and figure out what works. And for me, it's always in the absence of sales is just one thing. It's a value exchange. What I'm giving you is worth more than the money you're giving me. That's how I perceive sales. What I'm giving you is going to be definitely worth a lot more than the money you're going to give me. It's a value exchange to help people, right? So, but I want to get into your journey, and because I mean, you've got your podcast, Sales and Cigars. You've got your company, Helix, that's been helping companies for years. And then you've said some really disruptive things, like New York drug dealers taught you about bad sales habits, and you've got a lot of coined phrases out there. Tell me about that.
So the story is, I would get off the train, and the subway, and I would walk, 3 or 4 blocks to my apartment. Right around the subway, it was a big intersection, and at 86th Street. So there was always like a couple of dudes hanging around trying to sell some kind of drug, something, right? They would just, everybody, they would just hammer them every day, right? Do you want a little of this? You want a little of that? And, you just kind of smile, nod your head or wave them off. But what they were doing they were just not qualifying anybody. They were just asking everybody the same question. They weren't trying to understand who their customer was and what they wanted. They just made assumptions that somebody was walking by in a nice suit might, want a little, an 8-ball, or might want some of this, right? They had it all, right? You could get a fake Rolex, you could get an 8-ball, you could get whatever you wanted. But to me, it was like, when you thought about it from a sales perspective, they were awful salesmen. They were that salesperson that just, pitches to everybody. And I think that's a terrible way. It's what gives salespeople a bad name. You got to ask questions. You got to understand. You need to know who your real audience is. I wasn't their audience, yet they kept pitching every day. They were relentless. Give them credit but they were standing in one spot, just hitting everybody that comes by. I mean, it's a simple idea that you need to switch from that pitch and to really try to understand who you're trying to help, because you can't help them if you don't understand their situation.
And you can't help everybody. Now, you mentioned to my team that in actuality, you had one lesson that you learned that was a $2 million lesson. Tell me about that.
You're sitting in a room where, and I did what I just talked about. I thought I understood a problem with the CFO of a Fortune 500 company. And I was young, and I started to pitch what I assumed was their problem. And they had a problem that I could have solved. This was in the real estate office leasing space in New York. And had I asked a few questions about their problem, about how big it was, and if there was urgency and if there was a compelling reason to solve the problem, I would have closed a deal, because I was talking to the decision maker. I was talking to somebody that had a big problem. And I just started pitching what I thought was appropriate. So that cost me a $2 million deal, which would have cost me $250,000, $300,000. It's a very expensive lesson for a 26-year-old to learn, but it sunk in. I don't pitch. It's really the last thing. I tried to understand and try to help, and it was a lot of money, and I needed it at the time, but it was an expensive lesson. But that was a long time ago, over 3 decades ago. But I can still remember sitting in that room. That guy was wearing a red tie with a Brooks Brothers suit on. I mean, it was a beautiful conference room. And I pitched instead of tried to solve and tried to understand. And I lost. And he wanted to help me. He literally wanted to help me. And I blew it.
I've been there. I've totally been there. And, not just myself, but I've been there where I have a league of business development managers out there, and they're always bringing business. And whenever it's CEO to CEO, they'll bring me in, or if they're going to have an executive committee meeting, they'll bring me in. And even myself early on in this B2B space, because we're selling enterprise level solutions, right? Like I can solve many problems. And I listened to the BDM and the business development manager, and I went in and said, this is the problem that we figured out for you guys with your team, and this is how we're going to solve it, and this is going to be the economic impact. And the business development manager got it wrong, and the executive committee was like, well, that's not the biggest problem we're trying to solve. Hey, folks, if you're enjoying this episode and you're picking up what I'm putting down and what the guests are actually putting out there, do me a favor. Like and comment what you liked about the episode, or even comment what would you like to hear, what topics would you like to hear in the future, because believe me, it matters. I read absolutely every single one of them, and I want to bring you more and more value to help companies scale so that we can grow this podcast to make a bigger difference. Now let's get back to the show. Wow, because I can't blame my team. I assumed that my team knew what they were doing, and And they did, but they just missed it. They missed the boat. They didn't ask about deep enough questions to find out the root cause of the problem of the company. They found out the problem, but not the root cause, what was actually causing it, right?
Yeah, it was a symptom that they were sharing that they locked onto. It's a common mistake, but that's the part that as CEOs and business owners, and I think salespeople need to think of themselves as a CEO of their own little business within a business. Because as a salesperson, you're literally running your own little business within the confines of another business. If you think about it, right, you're worrying about the profit and loss. You're trying to put together the right deal for the situation, and there's finance involved. You want to make sure it's going to be profitable for you and for the customer and the company that you're working for. I mean, it's a little business, and if you take that level of responsibility, because you did something that a lot of people don't. You took responsibility for that. You didn't blame the BDM, right? They could have done a better job, but you took responsibility. That doesn't happen every day. And that's why.
Yeah. And then I identified from there, I learned that, we don't do symptoms. We don't do meds. We do cures. So no meds, cures. So we went back and debriefed. And then I realized, okay, how do I never allow this to happen again? And the way I do it, no matter what, if you bring me in, I have a simple statement and a simple question. So it's really simple, Walter. It's this simple. So my team has figured out that you've got some problems and challenges and that we can potentially help you. But just out of curiosity, I want to know that I'm on the same page as them, and I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. What do you think is the problem? And if you don't know the exact problem, you just know that you're not happy with what's going on. I want to hear it from you so I know that we're all on the same page and so I don't take anything for granted. So why do you want to have this meeting today?
So you're getting aligned with them to make sure there's nothing slipping through the cracks, right? You're getting
100%. And I want to hear from the horse's mouth because my team and your team did discovery, but for you, what's the purpose of this meeting today, and what problem are you trying to solve? Because I want to just cut to the chase and make sure we get things right, and that I understand you at the highest level.
And the customer appreciates that, right? Because you want them to tell you what they know, what they believe, what they think.
Yeah, because it's not a pitch fest, and I don't go in there to close the deal. I go in there to open up the relationship and to find a way we can, in agreement, move forward and help you.
Right. And you can't help if you don't understand. So that's what the drug dealers got wrong, right? They're not understanding. They're just pitching. It's what I got wrong that day where it cost me all that money, right? And it's being able to go in and say, yeah, I mean, you can do it lots of different ways. You have a nice, eloquent, simple way of asking the questions. Here's what I think I know. Where am I at? How does that land, right? It's just better to give them the floor and ask them to explain it to you. But if you're not confirming what you think you know and what you need to know, you're never going to get on the same page, as you say.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we all live in our own boxes. And then we put ourselves in boxes, other people's boxes, when we're trying to solve their problems. And when I say we live in each other's boxes, we don't live in each other's boxes. We live in our own boxes. And the fact is, organizations need help because they have blind spots, because they're all in their own box. And unless they get someone outside their box to give them perspective, an expert, mind you, not an amateur. I mean, if you're asking an amateur to solve your problems and not an expert, well, then you're an idiot.
Yeah, and you're going to end up with amateur results. I love the idea of getting the perspective, and I frame it this way. You're walking along with that client, with that CEO, whoever your client is. You're walking down this path through the forest, and you're seeing the exact same landscape as that client, but you're seeing it from your perspective, and they're seeing it from their perspective. And as an expert, as a salesperson, as somebody that has experienced this problem in the past, you can add to their perspective. You can get them to see what they're missing, the gap, the blind spot. But you got to walk alongside them so you can point it out. You can't be behind them pushing them. You can't be ahead pulling them. It's this idea of like walking along shoulder to shoulder. We're in this together. Let me tell you what I see here. And then they tell you what you see. Sometimes you learn from them. Sometimes they learn from you, but you're going to get to a better spot. You're going to see that beautiful landscape if you work it together. And that's where the magic happens as you're being that collaboration walking down that path.
Yeah, and so you work with organizations, and yeah, I've had to figure this out on my own because I bootstrapped a couple $1 million software company, and then I found myself listening to people that thought they were experts, and then I realized, well, if you can't generate revenue, then you're an amateur. I don't care how long you got in under your belt, you're not generating revenue. Let me try this thing out, and boom. All of a sudden, we're closing deals. Imagine that. Paperboy is running circles around you because I actually listen to people. I don't tell them because everyone has a blind spot. I have my own blind spots. You have your own blind spots. We all do it. As long as we're open to feedback, then we can grow and we can learn. Where do you think, with your experience, because I'm no longer, I am a consultant. Whenever I talk to a client, I'm consulting to see how I can solve their problems, but I don't do the sales training for other companies now because I built a software company to implement their training or your training into the system that does it for them. So I'm more of the systems and process guy, but I'm boots on the ground too. I'm not afraid of the battlefield. Bring me in, coach. Like
you'll go knock on the front door or stand up on the porch and ask for the business. Yeah, like you did as a kid.
I'm fearless. Let's go have a conversation, see how we can help some people.
Absolutely.
So where do you think a lot of the B2B companies today get it wrong? Because what is the most common problems you see in the space? Because people call you in when they need things fixed or when they need to scale.
Well, I think you touched on a piece of it before. They feel a symptom, right? So I had a guy call me last month. Can you help me with closing? Maybe. What's your problem? So he told me a story. He said, our closing rate dropped from 33 to 23. Go. Okay. So that's why you think you have a closing. So let me ask you a couple questions. 10 minutes later, we uncovered that was the symptom to a problem where he brought a new sales manager in, and the sales manager said, hey, guess what? We need 5 times your number in your pipeline at all times. So he wanted the magical 5 times the value in your pipeline to be, in relation to your goal. So if you have a $5 million goal, you got to have $25 million in your pipeline. So what happened was that people started stuffing their pipeline with junk, with crap, and their close rates dropped 10% because they weren't closing deals because the deals should never have been in there. So I didn't have to do closing training. We had to fix their process, right? We're back to the process idea. So bad management, bad process, and that solved their closing problem. So it's the ability to look at the underlying problem. So asking the right questions. So what I see them getting wrong, they hire the wrong people because they're not clear about what that person needs to do. And I see them having a huge problem with proper messaging, right? They just come out and they think that the salesperson that they hire is going to be able to create the right words and everything will take care of itself. Those are 2 big problems I see in that space where I work. They hire the wrong people. They're doing it in a way that is inefficient and will never result in a high success rate. And they just assume salespeople know how to message their product. They have a premium product at a premium price. They just assume that the salesperson can talk about value, and they need a little help usually. They need the message.
Yeah, and you said you got into this space and you've been doing it for a long time. You even did it outside of Helix. You were the founder of the Sales Integrator, and you've been a vice president of sales. And along your journey, you said, I got into this and started building companies to help companies because of the real lack of training in sales. I find that most companies, they don't have a framework, they don't have a process, and they're winging it. So they get lucky, they establish some wins, but then they stagnate they regress because there's competitors into the market that do have a process, that do have a system for developing salespeople. How often do you find that?
It's a commonplace. They don't have a process. There's the big buckets are that systems and processes that are repeatable, that when they're working, you just pour gas on them and they continue to go. So systems and processes for sales hiring. One that really gets very little support is sales management. So you'll often happen to me in my career, they take the salesperson who's producing the most and make them the sales manager. And that's mutually exclusive skills typically, right? Managing people and being a good salesperson, different skill sets. The first time I got promoted to be sales director for North America with a company, small company, and they promoted me at the holiday party. And I was telling my wife as we're driving home, I was excited about this. She says, "This is all great, right? Great promotion. Congratulations. But let me ask you a question. Have you ever managed anybody before? Because you can barely manage yourself. How are you going to go manage those 10 guys?" Right? So like poured water on my excitement. But she was right. So that happens every day. People get promoted and they have no idea what to do. So what happens? They get frustrated. The sales team gets frustrated. The owner gets frustrated, and they end up leaving and going and work for their competitor. So one of the problems I see as well is that sales managers get put into this role without any support, without any skills, and they don't ask for help, and because it's shine a weakness. So they get stuck, and this cycle keeps happening. That was one of the drivers, is that to do what I'm doing is to try to help them. Business owners struggle to see that connection or that disconnect between top salesperson that can automatically be a sales manager. It's got to be repeatable to be able to scale. And you need systems and processes for all of those pieces. Your sales manager should be able to be a conductor of your process, support them. They should be spending most of their time coaching their salespeople, not keeping their head buried in a CRM. They should be not being a hero. They should be supporting and coaching their salespeople.
Yeah, it's so funny, and it's just music to my ears hearing that, because I created a sales system, a sales enablement system. And we call it SMART, right? It's the sales machine, even though this podcast is the sales machine. But literally, it had sales, it has marketing, it has achievements, retention, and training, all within one system. It's an all-in-one system that increases your sales, and I can prove it because it automates and eliminates and innovates an organization. How does it automate? It automates all the processes, because a CRM is not supposed to be seen. It's just supposed to be used and effortlessly. So we have a sales CRM in there, but you use it effortlessly to just make your calls. It takes notes. It does everything for you. So it eliminates the admin and it innovates the organization, because you pick up the phone, that the CRM, it just works. You don't have to fill in a bunch of fields and go drive yourself crazy. AI can do that. A note taker can do that. So I can increase your sales by decreasing all of the admin shit your salespeople don't want to do. Because we don't want to do it. We don't want to see our CRM. We don't want to see AI. We want to make the call. We want to have conversations. We want to do discovery. We want to find the root cause of those problems, because we can solve them.
And you don't want to be bothered with all that detail. So you're solving tons and tons of problems that allow salespeople to do what they're supposed to do, be effective, whether it be a phone or face-to-face or creating the solution. It's awesome.
Yeah, because it's one thing to be efficient. You can make 100 calls a day, and then you have 0 appointments booked, 0 demos booked, 0 discovery done. Guess what? You're efficient. Congratulations, Bob. You win the prize, the efficiency award. You made 100 dials today, but you weren't effective, obviously, because you booked nothing.
Yeah, that's the rub, right?
That's the rub. Rub-a-dub-dub, right? You better go to the bathtub, because you're not making sales, or you're not making a difference in people's lives because you're not following a good enough process, right? So it's one thing to be efficient. It's another thing to be effective. And I love how without a framework, I'm not even interested in winging it. Because if you want to win it, you cannot wing it. You need a system and a process that's duplicatable, replicatable. Otherwise, you just bought yourself a job. Yeah. Especially as a sales leader.
And as a business owner, you're never going to scale because you can't repeat what worked. You don't know why it worked, right? If you don't have that system that's repeatable, you're stuck, as you say, winging it, but doing one-offs, and it's not scalable because you don't know why.
You're like that one hit wonder. You're one and done, right? And for me, that's a fear. That's a total fear. But I don't live in fear. I live with faith. I live with faith because, I'm faithful. I have faith that things are always going to work out. My God is bigger than all my problems. And he's empowered me with all these different experiences to help others.
It's there's abundance out there, and the world gets bigger. If I win, doesn't mean somebody loses, right? It's not a zero-sum game.
Amen and amen. I would rather walk away from an offer or a sale. I will walk away if I don't see the difference I can make. Or if they can do it cheaper and they don't need, or like if someone has 2 to 5 salespeople and, they can just use Excel spreadsheets, I suggest they do that. You don't need an enterprise level system when you have 2 to 5 people. Now, if you get to 10 to 20 and you're using Excel, and if you're actually and you're doing business to business sales and you need to capture every conversation and you need to track all of the meetings and the interactions, then you're going to be dealing with chaos. So you need a system.
Yeah, it's got to be the right fit, right? And as I said, round peg, square hole, right? You have to be honest and help that person realize that you're not there yet, right? And that might be a tough conversation, but here's what you can do at your point. Manage it this way, and then when you get to this level, this is where we can step in. And sometimes you're too big, right? There's a situation there, depending upon what you're selling. You're out cutting grass as a 10-year-old. You can't go cut out the guy's 6 baseball fields. You can't go to the school district. You're going to just have to you have to know what your capabilities are and be able to work within those and then expand. You can't overcommit and overpromise. Otherwise you lose your credibility.
Yeah. And you lose an opportunity. A lot of the times, even I've been in a situation like that where I've been in a situation where there's an enterprise level company. And as an example, we have our software solution. We offer business intelligence, operational intelligence, and field sales intelligence so that you can automate your entire business, eliminate admin for your sales, your marketers, and your customer success and customer service. We're front of the house, baby. Everything front of the house. But we don't do ERP, enterprise relationship planning platforms. We plug in. So, and I've recently had one where literally they're selling automotive. They're a car distributor, but they sell Mazdas, they sell Ford, they sell Rolls Royce, right? They have 8 different ERPs, and we're in the midst. We've provided proof of concept. We've aligned what our software could do on the front end. And for me, I'm like, let's be honest. This needs to be a pilot program because we're not going to come in, bid against the big boys or overcharge you for something that we haven't even demonstrated works. I know it'll work, but let's do a pilot and take it step by step. And I was in a big construction store, kind of like Home Depot, but on this side of the world. And they're like, well, wow. So initially we're looking at like 20 users and doing projects for them, but they have probably 300 salespeople and they're using a big system and they hate it. And their people actually are not using it. So they want to transfer it to ours because ours is so simple. Like on the sidebar, it says smart sales, marketing, achievements, retention, and training. No, you can't build a software that simple. Well, I did because I'm that simple. And they're like, well, we should just transfer all of our stuff to you. And I'm like, hold on. And the CEO's like, wait, we just invested all this money. I like it, but can we go slower? And I said, yes, thank you. Please. I'm in alignment with you. Let's go slower. Yeah. And then we don't want to disrupt what you got going on. We want to make everything better, but I'm fine going slower. I just used her words and reinforced it. And now they came back and said, we like everything we see. Let's see how we can move forward. And the CEO says, John, we're going to have a meeting right now and decide how we move forward, but we'll get back to you. And I said, fair enough. And thanks for the advice about real time versus target. I should give you a royalty because I'm going to make that widget available on the front of the software. And she was laughing. And I'm like, no, it's a great idea. It really is.
But if we're listening, we're learning from our clients as to what they really need and what they want. That helps us make our products and our services better. You got that from listening.
100%. And I told her, I would probably give you a royalty off this. And she was laughing. Now that was for 20 users. Now procurement called, the IT called, and they're aligning. We've not yet won the business. Am I confident we can help them? Oh, 100%. 100% of 100%. I know we can help. And then they called back though and they said, what about, all right, volume discounts? And they have 100 stores, just like Home Depot, right? They have hundreds throughout the Philippines. And they're like, okay, how about the pilot? If the pilot project is small still, and we just do one outside of our projects, we do one salesperson per branch. Now we're at 120. That deal went from 20 to 120. And that's still a pilot because they're huge. They're enormous. They're a big business. They do $1 billion, half a billion dollars a year, all from listening and service.
Goes back to what we started to talk about. It's the approach. It's the mindset that you bring to trying to be of service. You can't be of service if you're not listening, if you're not curious, if you don't have a little empathy for your customer's situation, right? I mean, that's where it all, the magic happens, right? Paying attention to those things that they say and poking around a little bit deeper. Because that's where they're really having trouble is where you can provide the greatest value to them. And you can't get there just by running in and pitching and trying to sell the big deal for 20. Your pilot slowing down gets you bigger. Slowing down makes you go faster in reality.
Yeah, and reality is the fact that because I'm not there to sell, I'm there to serve. And by serving that CEO, listening to her and her pain, because her pain now is they spent like $150,000 on the biggest CRM in the world and no one can use it. So that's when cheap's not cheap. That's right. Pretty expensive. And so by listening and saying, and she's like, but ultimately, okay, I see this solution. We've thought that the other solution would work too. But what is the difference between you and everybody else? And I said, well, I'm not going to say we're better than anybody, but you hit it on the head. We're different. We're not expecting you to follow our process and use our system and have your people use our system. We adjust to your system. So there's no disruption. We just we just automate your process. So your people follow the process. We just automate, eliminate, and innovate. So now they're spending 20 to 30% more of their time actually talking to customers. Times that by 1,000.
A couple of dollars in there that they might be able to make.
Do you think if I get your people selling 20%, 30% more often that your sales will go up or down?
Your profit's going to go up. Your revenue's going to go up because you're going to be doing a better job because they can be more focused on doing the work rather than filling in blanks.
And me being able to do that, to demonstrate that gives me so much joy because I know, wow, we can transform your whole organization. And you're just big and clunky.
It's a sports analogy, like where you see the field, right? And if you can slow down the field, then you can go faster. And it's really true in sales. You slow everything down, you get people to stop and think about what we're doing. Let's not look so like we're so greedy. We're not looking to just jam this down. Let's really make sure that we do this the right way. And that always, when it's done well with the right parties and there's real service in there, it always ends up with a better outcome for everybody. Everybody wins.
Amen and AM. Excuse me. Amen and amen. I love helping people. I love what you're doing. Sales to me is the catalyst that makes the world go round. Doesn't matter.
Starts the ball rolling.
If you have the best product in the world, but you cannot sell it, you're dead in the water. You can have products that are better than the best selling ones. But if you can't sell it, you're dead in the water, and people are getting inferior products because you cannot sell them.
And that's the tragedy.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right salespeople doing the right things and you have a better mousetrap, the community suffers.
Yeah. And they don't even know they're suffering. So, but sales can get complicated because they're status quo. People don't want to change, or they approve people to buy Salesforce or HubSpot. And then we come in there and we're like, wow, you did that? Okay. How's that working out for you? Like, it's not. I get it. But we cannot buy nothing now because, now our head's on the line.
Right. They're going to do more to save face than they will to save money.
Oh, yeah, because at the end of the day, if they have to change a system that they invested $100,000 on, all of a sudden, what? You want us to buy something else? Why? Well, we didn't know our people can't use this, or it's complicated. Yeah, well, salespeople aren't techie. What? Hello, newsflash. You think salespeople are techie? They're not engineers. Oh, you bought a system that was built by engineers who thought they knew a process and how to sell. No, they don't. No, they don't. And
salespeople love change, so let's keep changing things on them, right? That's another thing. You lose credibility as a leader, right? Yeah, it's not complicated if you break it down to the simplest components, and that's what you're talking about. Sales is a lot of fun, but if you break it down to the simplest thing, we're really selling these feelings that somebody wants or they want to get away from, and if we can help them go towards what they want and avoid the problems that they have, and they can see that as we describe the outcomes we can create, it becomes a lot easier. And it doesn't involve just telling people things and making things up or pitching features and benefits. It's about delivering something that's going to be meaningful to them at the end of the day. And sometimes they've made a mistake. So how do they get out of that $100,000 mistake? That's something that we could have to help them unwind. But it's going to be bumpy, and they need to be able to recognize that up front. And no matter what we're doing, right, if there's some sort of transformation in an organization, that is going to be a bumpy process. It's not going to be super smooth every day and everything goes as planned. There's always going to be some bumps. And if we don't plan for those bumps, we're not doing our job.
Amen and amen. That's where we come in and say, look, totally 100% get it. You're already invested. The only way out of this is to start small. Don't go big. And that's where we can help you. We can do a pilot for you.
Pilots are a great way to navigate that little bridge that you need to navigate, or build the bridge.
Absolutely. And, that reverses the risk, and it minimizes the risk and gives you a lot of upside. And that's what an irresistible offer is for me, is a system that pays for itself. I mean, you hear about irresistible offers from a lot of internet marketers. And for me, what is an irresistible offer? It's simply not just an offer that cannot be refused. It's an offer that you've just done risk reversal. That's the core.
I love that phrase. I mean, you're not just mitigating the risk, you're like flipping it so that they see that they're going to get a payback in a time frame. That's ROI.
Amen. And for me, it's always, I created a system called Next Level Sales. So my system is simple. It's an acronym for how to get them to the next level. And Next Level Sales is about transformation, not transactions. So where are you at right now? And what's the next level look like for you and your organization? So the only way I can get you to the next level, let me just tell you our framework. Because when we sell, it's as a service. So it's going to be a discovery process. So let me just tell you how my salespeople do it. Would that be helpful for you? Because we're going to take you step by step through our system of how we serve you, and with no secrets. But at the end, we're going to even show you how the system can even pay for itself, or how you can get maximum discounts from my salespeople. I'll just give you the formula. How about that? So you'll be on the inside. And then I explained to them, next is a next level system for sales for you to actually take your organization to the next level. But the only way we can do that, first of all, we have to check the box of your needs. What are your needs? currently in the organizations, the problems that you are having and the root causes of those problems, you have a need to fix them. We're going to figure that out. And if we figure that out, then we can go to the next step, which is the economic impact of those problems and or those challenges. And by establishing what's it costing you right now by not changing, and or what is going to be your return on investment by actually investing in something that's going to help you, what's that going to look like? And then the next step are, what are the X factors that's holding you back from getting there? Is it individuals in your organization? Is it your buying process? Is it your funding? We can work out funding programs. What are the X factors? What are the objections to actually achieving this with us? And finally, once we figure that all out, then we can establish timing and a timeline of implementation so that you know when you're going to that next level. That's next level sales. Simplify. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. You've got an acronym that the acronym keeps everything simple and it flows. All of your businesses have that. I love that. It makes it easy for us, like I always say, a dumb sales guy's brain to navigate that. I love it.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I follow your process by you telling me what you need, what economic value you need to get out of this engagement, what are the X factors that's been holding you back, right? And what is the timeline you're operating from? So this is our service framework to take you to the next level.
They're giving you the
negotiation. Yeah, exactly. They give you the answer because it becomes their idea.
And that's what it's all about, right? If you can get them to come to the yeses, a little yes here, a little yes here, a little yes here, it makes that final yes. Then, it's their decision. They've come up with this. They see it the whole way, right? And if you're getting those little yeses along the way, the solution at the end is a no-brainer. I love it.
So you do this all the time. So what's a simple test business owners and or sales leaders can do to evaluate their company's sales process or their sales division to identify what's going wrong? What's something simple that they can do and then ultimately figure out how to work with you?
Well, I mean, our discovery process is asking a lot of questions. And since we know where to look for these challenges, we're able to diagnose. So I use some tools that we ask them questions, they answer the questions, and then we're able to give them back. Here's what you're doing really well. Here's what needs to improve. And here are the things that you absolutely must fix. These are priorities. Call it an audit, call it an analysis gap, right? But that's how we structure it. Before we really do anything, we want some data to understand. And they give us the data by answering a series of questions, 45 minutes, and then we can present data points that give us a priority, give us an ROI, give us an understanding of what's working well and where the strengths and weaknesses are of their team, where their holes are, where the gaps are.
Right on. And where can people find you to get that done?
The two easiest ways to find me is on LinkedIn, Walter L. Crosby, right? There's only one of me. That's a really good way to just kind of see what I'm talking about. I'm posting all the time ideas, giving them things to think about. My website, Helix Sales Development, that gives them some resources. It's all there, all out there for them to take a look at. They can go to Amazon and pick up a book. I've given them 7 things that they can avoid, scaling their sales. There's a lot there for them to sink their teeth into before they have to jump into a call. I'm giving them information, giving them things to think about. And they often I got these 2 problems, right? And then that's where we start. They usually have 5 to 7 problems, but we start with the 1 or 2. And then we figure out how big those are and how if we fix the big problems, it makes the other problems easier to fix, right? And it's just a process we go through.
Right on. Ladies and gentlemen, if you need help, reach out. At least take the assessments, get the book, and let Walter help you. Thanks for being on the show, Walter. It's been unbelievable. Now it's time to have a cigar.
It is time to have a cigar. I appreciate it, John. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yep. It was a brilliant show. That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and refer a friend. And if you want even more value, go to thesalesmachine.com, click on resources, and there's tons of resources there to increase profits and drive performance in your business. Right on, come on.